Okay, let us know. Okay, so it looks like we are live now. Welcome everyone. This is our third artist talk with Semiahmoo Arts, virtual artist talk. Today's talk is in recognition of World Mental Health Day. And for that, we have invited writer Taslim Jaffer. But before we start, I would like to acknowledge that we are having today's virtual talk on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. So welcome, Taslim. Thank you for joining us. We are honored to have you here. You have a very impressive bio. You are a freelance writer and editor, and you're pursuing a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Nonfiction. Your work has been published in such impressive places such as Maclean, CBC Parents, WestCoast Families, Huffington Post Canada, Research News, and other places. You are teaching a writing class in the Memoir and Expressive genre in rehabilitative and community settings since 2015. So that's really great. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your background and why the topic of mental health is so important to you?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me here. So as you mentioned, yes, I'm a freelance writer and editor, and I've been publishing in magazines, newspapers, and anthologies for almost a decade now. And I'm currently pursuing my Master of Fine Arts in Creative Nonfiction. But my passion, I would say, I have a special love for expressive writing. And that is the writing where we explore our thoughts and our feelings on paper with the specific intention of finding meaning and finding some healing and growth in those experiences. And this ties in with today, World Mental Health Day, and mental health in general. Mental health is really important to me because I think it is a very important part of our health equation. It's an important part of ourselves that is often overlooked. So a day like today that brings awareness to our mental health is necessary, and I'm happy to be part of this conversation. You know, normally when we talk about health, like if I was to ask somebody, what's a healthy person? Tell me what a healthy person is. Someone might say, someone who's physically fit, who can run for miles, who eats a certain amount of fruits and vegetables every day, you know, that kind of thing. But that is just one part of who we are. We're not just physical bodies. We are also stories, and we are traumas, and we are triumphs, and we're experiences. And we have feelings about these experiences. And how we deal with them, how we work through them, how we find meaning in those experiences affects our overall health. So yes, it can affect even our physical health, and it affects our relationships with each other, with ourselves. And so I teach expressive writing because I think mental health is a crucial part of who we are and how we get through this world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so I actually did some research about what Mental Health Day, you know, where it came from. And it was originally initiated by the World Federation for Mental Health in 1992. And when they started, they didn't really have a clear concept of, you know, what they wanted to do. They just, you know, wanted to have broadly promote the importance of mental health and educate the public. But in the last 28 years, they stated that this movement has grown so rapidly and has become so important that their manual toolkit has now even been published and translated in several languages such as Chinese, Arabic, Japanese, Hindu and Russian, which are maybe typically cultures where mental health is rather taboo, but it shows that, you know, like it is gradually being really recognized as something important. And even the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Ghebreyesus, has recognized the importance by saying that good mental health is absolutely fundamental to overall health and well-being. But having said that, there is still this stigma around mental health. You know, not many people, like if you have a cold or a flu, you're okay saying that. But if you suffer from something mental health wise, you rather say that because there's still, you know, that taboo around it. In your professional opinion, how can we overcome this stigma and transform the topic on mental health into something productive and open?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think it really boils down to sharing our stories. That is how we break down this stigma. Because, you know, if everyone was to talk about the things that were concerning them or the challenges that they go through, we would actually all find a similarity amongst us. You know, often what is true for one of us on a very deep level, maybe not the same story, but that underlying challenge is actually true for all of us. We can relate to each other when we share our stories. There's such power in that. And I think, along with the awareness of mental health and the importance of mental health, we're also seeing a rise in the importance of storytelling and sharing our life stories, which is why memoir is such a blooming genre right now. Um, you know, people sharing their stories, because that's exactly what it is. It's like, this is something I've gone through. I'm being vulnerable and willing to share it. People are receiving it because they are also then being seen. Because when we see ourselves in someone else's story, we feel validated. We feel like, okay, we're not the only one going through this. And yeah, so I'm seeing a rise in, yes, the awareness of mental health importance, but as a writer, I notice that storytelling is also, and I don't think it's I don't think it's just a coincidence that these two are rising at the same time.
Yes, and you mentioned the, you know, the similarities that we share, and that makes it easier for us to come out and you know, talk openly about it. And I guess there is a, currently we are all in a global pandemic, and there is a collective grief that we all share. Grief of, you know, losing a loved one, losing a job, losing just the sense of security that we all used to, you know, have. And ironically, the COVID virus has hit the countries that are developed, that are wealthy nations, the hardest, or initially it did, which totally, you know, caught us off guard. And the statistics are actually very, very depressing. So the recent poll by Mental Health Commission of Canada found that half of the nation reported worsening mental health since the pandemic started. And then 44% stated that they feel worried or anxious. 1 in 10 Canadians who have been asked said that their mental health had worsened a lot as a result of COVID. And 25% of people asked have reported that they have an increased alcohol and substance abuse habit now. So with that in mind, with those, you know, grim statistics, what would you say, how can we take our own happiness into our own hand and turn this tragedy into something that we can all learn from?
Yeah, it is hard to hear those statistics and to personally know people who are going through these challenges. But I think, let's think about, what are the things that we were innately turning to way back when this kind of all started when we started realizing, okay, this is a real thing, like COVID-19 is here, and it's not happening somewhere far away, it's happening in our cities and in our neighborhoods. We started turning to art. We turned to stories, we turned to music. They were offering all kinds of free programming online, the opera and symphonies, because this is where we get our connection from, is art. And this is where we can find also some healing in our stories. And I think this is where we need to start to get back to that place of feeling happy, or of feeling, at least finding the strength to meet these challenges. So art isn't necessarily about covering things up and making them go away. It's actually about looking at what's in front of you and finding strength, and then meeting these challenges from that place of strength.
And so part of the art is writing, and you are specialized in that. And you mentioned the memoirs, writing memoirs, and that it connects people, and it gives them, a sense of being together and solidarity. Can you talk a little bit about that? What exactly is memoir writing?
So memoir is basically sharing stories from your life. So it's not really the same as an autobiography, which, often there are autobiographies written by famous people, and it talks about their life from A to Z kind of thing. But a memoir can be written, it's written by anybody who just has some life-gained wisdom that they would like to share, or some stories on some universal themes like love and loss and grief and joy. It can be happy things too. And we share our stories that expose these underlying themes. And it's just something we're drawn to, because we've been telling stories since the beginning of time. But when we tell stories, or personal stories like this, it's one thing for the writer, because the writer gets a release and the writer makes meaning from what has happened to them in their lives. But the receiver, the listener, the reader also benefits. And that's memoir writing. And I just want to talk a bit about expressive writing, because it's a little bit different. So expressive writing is actually, it's a lot more personal. It's not necessarily writing for other people to know your stories. It's an exploration of what has happened to you, where you are now, what have you gained, what can you extract from what has happened to you, and where would you like to go. And so this is it's a type of writing that can be kind of like what you might write in a journal. But if you, for example, take a class in expressive writing, then the instructor, like myself, I provide writing prompts. So to help you get those ideas down on paper. And it's a very non-judgmental way of writing. Whereas when you write a memoir, you're putting your work out publicly, but expressive writing, not necessarily, because that work is for your own exploration.
And you are actually, as a matter of fact, going to offer with Semiahmoo Arts a 4-week course starting November 3rd. It's titled Writing for Healing. So what can the participants expect? It's an expressive writing class, and you just explained it nicely what it means. What can the participant expect from this 4 weeks?
So a Writing for Healing class is a very safe space. It's for writers of all levels. Even if you don't consider yourself to be a writer, this is really an opportunity to just learn how writing could be a tool for you. And it's a place where we're going to think about things like grounding ourselves in where we are now. We're going to look at gratitude for what has happened and what's happening now, and we're going to look at growth. So where will we go from there? In a class, there is an opportunity to share, and I've already talked a little bit about how that benefits both the writer and the listener or reader. And Yeah, it's a 1 hour for 4 weeks class, but I do give a little bit of homework or a little bit of suggestion of what you can do during the week so that you have an opportunity to practice some of the tools and techniques. And my participants always have access to me by email throughout the 4 week class and beyond for any, if they need any tips or any prompts, for during the week when we're not together.
And so writing is very much dependent on your ability to speak, to master the language. Is it also your class, Writing for Healing? Is it also suitable for English as second language users, like myself, for example? Obviously, my English is not as flawless as somebody who's native speaker. Can I still benefit from your class?
Absolutely. In fact, because it's not a class where you're handing in assignments to be graded, this is actually the perfect class for somebody who's writing, English if it's their second language. Although there is no reason why you couldn't write in your first language if that's where you can tap into um, that more creative side or that more expressive side. There's absolutely no reason why you couldn't write in your first language. When we communicate or share about the writing, it would need to be translated to English for everybody to, so we can use one common language. But as somebody who loves all languages, and I think it's great when people know more than just English. And if English is your first language, or if English is not your first language, then you can feel free in my class to use your first language.
I think English is actually a beautiful language. You have very positive ways to the way you express yourself, versus German, which is a very harsh sound. It's rather, not so uplifting than German and English people do. There's actually this ad that makes a mockery of the German language. It shows other languages how beautifully the sound of butterfly, papillon, and then schmetterling. It's like so rough. So
that's the only word I know in German because of that.
Yeah. And you mentioned that we are also going to practice gratitude, and we are, this is Thanksgiving long weekend. Thanksgiving is about appreciation and gratitude. And research has shown that positive feelings such as joy and love increase, not just boost our happiness level, but they also increase our problem solving skills as well as our mental focus. Is your class going to help people with these skills too?
Yeah, because I think if you look at why gratitude works that way, like what's the underlying reason that a grateful attitude helps us and improves our outlook, is because it changes our outlook, right? So if we're looking at something with a negative lens like all the time, then our outlook on everything around it and even things not related to it is going to be negative. But when we are forced to kind of look at it with an attitude of gratitude, it changes our perspective. So really, I'm not teaching people like to be grateful. I'm just trying to show people if you look at something differently. There's a famous quote by Wayne Dyer, who was a spiritual teacher and author. And he said that if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And to me, that is so powerful because, that can be applied anywhere. But writing is a special tool that can allow you to do that, because you put something down on paper and it's in one form, and then it allows you to look at it from a different angle. Like, what if I looked at it this way? If it's right in front of you, you're able to change it and play with it. And so that's what we kind of work on. So I'm not going to be hammering people and saying you should be grateful for what you have. I think that's a whole, there's issues with that too. I think that we should be allowed to feel what we feel, but hey, let's look at it from a different perspective. Because there's also been studies, I don't want to focus on that we only have to write positive things to be positive people, because there have been studies that have come out of the United States, one by Dr. James Pennebaker, and there have been other conceptually similar experiments also that have come out and found that if you write about your traumas and you write about the negative things that have happened to you and negative emotions regularly, you can actually improve your immune function, physical symptoms of illnesses like rheumatoid arthritis and respiratory illnesses. So there is a benefit to actually looking at things that they are and not trying to cover up. I think that it's important to then do something with it, and maybe you need to do that with a professional, or maybe you can do that through the writing process. But that's the great thing too, about taking this class, the Writing for Healing classes, because you will have at the end of each class written material that you can then share. If you're seeing a professional like a therapist, you can share with that therapist or a trusted friend. So there's a lot that will come out of that class.
Or you can turn it into a bestseller, like Rhonda Bynes did with The Secret.
You could, yes.
So you are actually really trained in writing and in how writing helping people to improve their well-being through the process of writing. Can you tell us a little bit more about this, correlation between writing and it seems like from what you are telling us, there's different types of writing and different effects. So how does it, there's cause and effect, how does writing affect our mood and well-being?
Well, first I want to talk a little bit about, you were saying about being trained in this process. I think my biggest training ground was actually the fact that I've been journaling since I was 10, which is like now over 3 decades. And when I look back over my journals and I look at how the different techniques I used just innately, I can see how I was able to, get certain things out in a healthy, sort of appropriate manner. And so those are some of the tools and techniques that I just kind of innately did, and I've collected them, and I've done my own research into expressive writing and how we can use writing, to benefit ourselves and to improve our mental health. So just wanted to clarify that the training background is, a lot of it is hands-on.
Which is oftentimes the best, most authentic one.
Yeah. So, and then in terms of how we can, sorry, can you repeat the last part of the question?
Yes, how writing can help boost our well-being and mental health.
Okay, so several different ways. One is simply the fact that we are just releasing it. We're not storing whatever it is that we've been bottling up inside. And that in itself is actually more valuable than we might give it credit for. So, first of all, doing that is really helpful. The other way that writing helps us boost our mood is recreate situations or through writing. So, for example, if something makes you feel really happy, like maybe going for a walk outside in nature, that makes you feel really happy, but you don't have access to it in this moment because maybe the weather is really bad, or you're unable to drive because you're not physically feeling well enough to do that, you can actually create that experience on paper. And by creating that experience, your body actually thinks it's happening right now. So you could write about the things that you're smelling as you're going on this walk on paper. You can write about the things that you're seeing, can boost your mood this way. It's actually a really effective way to otherwise need. So
it sounds a bit like a visualization technique in a writing form.
Right. So especially for people who are who innately just turn to writing, or who find that when they read ahead, especially for those kind of people, this exercise is very effective.
And you are actually, for a living, you are helping people, right? Through the act of writing to get better mentally. So have you seen results in your students?
Yeah, so I for a few years I've been working at a local hospital in the adolescent psychiatric unit, providing this kind of writing classes weekly. And the interesting thing is that we will often have like a nurse or an occupational therapist, and there have been so many times when those every day, when I'm not there, so many times where they've told me afterward, like, I had no idea that that particular person was going through that, or that they saw it that way, or that that was so important to them, because it's a different way to elicit that type of information for the youth, information about themselves, and then it's a different way for the healthcare professional to also get that information. So that's where I've seen the benefit, because I do shorter classes. My goal is to teach as many people these tools as possible. So I don't always have like a long-term window where I can see longer term benefits. But I'm hoping that with the tools and techniques I provide, people can go forth and create their own healing path.
Your class sounds really exciting. So in fact, even I signed up. I'm not a writer, but I want to give it a try. Is there an age limit? Like, what age range is your class target? You just mentioned you teach youth, but that is obviously different, demographics than adults. Our brain is different than teenagers, right? So.
Yeah, so I definitely, for this class, I would recommend 18 and over, and so adults, and there's no cap at the top. As long as you can tune into Zoom, you're welcome to come. It would be nice to offer a separate one for youth as well, but the classes would definitely be shaped differently. So having that would be important.
And have you ever had a student who turned out to be a best-selling author eventually?
No, I haven't. Well, especially not with expressive writing, because most people in these classes are not actually wanting to be. And so it's a very different type of writing than if I was teaching like a creative writing class or something, and helping someone with a manuscript, things like that.
But maybe they have discovered their love for writing. I'm just thinking many people, like you mentioned with your the psychiatrists and nurses, that they didn't know the outcome. And I just think many people might just not realize the benefits and the effect, because it does sound a bit of an effort, to sit down and write. Like, when I sit down, I have to write complex email. It's like, and then I start vacuum cleaning and cleaning the house and doing anything but writing. So how would you give people advice how to start with the first paragraph?
Well, I think first of all, signing up for a class is actually, a lot of people sign up because they just want to establish that practice, right? A class holds you accountable, and part of what we talk about is actually how do we establish a practice outside of this 1 hour that we're together every week. And I can tell you, as a writer for the past 10 years, it doesn't really get easier. Oftentimes for me, it's like the fear of the deadline looming that will make me sit down and get something done. And that's okay, because sometimes some of us write really well when we have like a deadline, looming ahead. So yeah, so the first paragraph, I don't know, I would probably start by the first word. Really, I would start with one sentence, and go from there. We have to take it, word by word, sentence by sentence, and there are some techniques that we will do in the class that kind of forces you to write without consciously thinking. That's where we get stuck, is that we want to write perfectly. And the beauty, yeah, and that never comes out right. Whatever you read in a book or a magazine is never ever the first draft. But I think writing, again, it's not anything like a memoir or a magazine article. The beauty is that there's nobody judging you, not an editor, not readers. It's just you and the page. And a lot of us have to unlearn how to write that way, right? We have to unlearn how to write with this editor, like looking over our shoulder, because since the time we're in school, we're writing for somebody else, like a teacher or whatever. So we have to unlearn that, and we have to write like nobody's reading.
That's beautifully said. So the expressive writing is writing like nobody's reading, but then the memoir is actually meant for people to read. Is there a transition? Did you ever observe that your student starts with expressive writing because they're shy or they are, new to that, and then they transition into memoir writing and share their writing confidently with others?
I can tell you from my personal experience that this is, that was my trajectory. So I like I said, journaling since I was 10. Obviously, that was just for myself. And now I'm writing my life stories that, hopefully a lot of people are going to read. So one thing that many creative people or professional artists will do in many genres, not just writing, is they keep a journal, or they keep some place where they can dump their thoughts in a non-judgmental, private manner.
Yeah.
And then they pick and choose, like, okay, well, I can talk about this publicly quite comfortably, and this is what I'm going to focus on. Because sometimes we just need to write without judgment for everything to come out. Otherwise, if we write from the beginning as if someone's going to be reading it, we are going to be like unconsciously sort of censoring and monitoring what we put out. But it's really important for lots of reasons that we are able to write without that kind of concern hanging over our head. Our writing, but not everyone who is writing for healing is interested in writing for anybody else.
It's more therapeutic for themselves, helping them. I think this is a very good tool to learn, especially right now with, us all dealing, happening, and hopefully it can give the participants a sense of calmness and ease, and also clarity in their head. Like we tend to have so much clutter in our head. So hopefully, your class can help to clear the clutter. Yeah. Okay, I see we are now minutes. Yeah. Okay. So Alexander is messaging here. Okay, so we should wrap up. Are there any questions from the YouTube audience? Okay. I don't know. Let me see. No. Okay. No questions. All right. Well, then I guess we should wrap up. We are going to post the details about Taslim's Writing for Healing class in the YouTube channel, also available on our website and our social media. If you have any questions regarding her class, it's going to start November 3rd, every Tuesday for 4 weeks, 1 hour via Zoom. Please email us at info@semiahmooarts.com. We are happy to assist you. And you can also maybe contact Taslim directly. She has a website. We will also put that in the chat in YouTube. And we look forward to your class. I definitely am excited.
I'm excited.
Maybe I'm gonna be the next Virginia Woolf. Gonna be famous or something. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, Taslim, for taking the time for being here, acknowledging World Mental Health Day. I am really happy to see that mental health, our mental well-being is gaining momentum and is gaining importance throughout the world. And unfortunately, there's sad example in countries that then trigger nations to pay attention and understand the importance, not just our physical well-being, but also that our body and our minds are connected to each other. And as you mentioned, Taslim, the perception of how we see life, I think is also very pivotal towards our happiness and how we see